Alright, here's the deal with today's chapter. This may be my favorite chapter of my entire story. Not just because it has my Imperial Gardens in it. Most of this I have written down in my memoirs, and I just can't do this one justice, so I'm gonna read it for you, okay? I'll try to make it as interesting as I can during reading. Enjoy.
Took you long enough.
Yeah, good thing you chose an easy spot.
Chapter 19. Where are we headed today? I looked at Scar. You're not gonna like it. Whatever, I'm down for anything. Well, I was thinking we could just walk around Demias Krai, see the city coming up. Scar hopped off the banister, pocketing the knife she'd been twirling. What? You want to just walk around the place we see every single day? Besides, you're still on crutches. I told you weren't gonna like it. No, I'm fine with it, she said. I'm just saying we could survive a zombie apocalypse, or we could walk the streets we walk anyway. I think that's a pretty obvious choice. You don't even walk the streets, Scar. You jump on top of the buildings and run along the roofs. Come on. I grabbed her hand and started pulling her to the door. That's part of being a Mistborn, she grumbled. It comes with the abilities. Wait, this is the back exit. Don't tell me you want to take a detour through the gardens. Her shoes squeaked across the cross-hatched marble floor as I dragged her behind me. Despite her strength, she was really light, which was good because tugging someone with one hand and supporting myself on a crutch with the other was kind of hard. I pulled her through the heavy wooden doors to the back entrance, which, although never seen by anyone but us, was still wreathed in intricate woodwork and ISO embellishments. Scar went limp, so I had to pull her onto my shoulders and carry her out. It took a minute for me to stabilize myself. I had to sire to bring the crutch back to my armpit after I dropped it. Stopping near the edge of the balcony, I looked out over the gardens, which offered all kinds of color, fall and otherwise. I shook my head to get a lock of her deep red hair out of my face. This kind of defeats the purpose of going on a walk. Why do you even want to walk around your gardens? You're out here all the time, she mumbled, as though her face was being squished, even though it was completely free. What's wrong with being in the gardens? It's the cliché. Going on a walk through the gardens with your girlfriend? Who even does that? I do. Resting the crutch on the banister at the edge of the balcony, I sat her down beside the crutch and looked into her eyes. She gave me half a glare until I kissed her. Finally she sighed, pulling herself up beside me. Fine, but we're not holding hands. You don't want to hold my hand? I'm just afraid if I did, some seer on Earth would see us and make us into a cheesy chick flick. We didn't hold hands, but we did walk closely as we stepped down into the garden proper. Pungent greenery surrounded us on all sides, colors and textures mixing to make a living tapestry. From the manicured grass below to swaying truffula trees above, the garden was, and is, a dream come true. I didn't personally do as much of the gardening now, but every week I required at least 3 hours reprieve from my duties as emperor so I could spend time with my plants. I trimmed them, maintained the specific atmospheres some of the plants needed, and planned new areas I'd fill out over the years. Now the garden looked whole, but I could still see so much waiting soil in the corners and the edges that I would someday fill with wonderful plants. And let me tell you, I have. Oh, and there's still so much space. I love it. Anyway, sorry. Scar and I chatted our way through the gardens, crossing over the stream and stopping by the pond to watch the exotic fish for a bit. Eventually we walked up the grassy hill that formed the back of the gardens. There were more than a few Saramayans spending the afternoon like Scar and I were. The gardens were open to everyone. They waved as we passed, excited to see us walking around. Scar was still a little uncomfortable about the notoriety, but I'd gotten to where it didn't bug me as much. Leaving the gardens behind, we passed through the back gates of the palace and stepped out onto the street. Kids ran around the square here, chasing each other with sticks. Most of the residential buildings were farther out from the Keltis, but the kids liked to come here to play. Now that the construction work was slowing down, businesses were beginning to sprout up. We were still working on making currency popular, but people were happy to barter and trade until things became more regularized. Because there was little money to be had, anyone could apply for a business permit and location from the Spatial Planning Committee. I loved to see the peace and happiness that Saramayans had. We were in a war, but at least the people were free. They still held the title of a people recently freed, and that unity meant peace. For my part, I did everything I could to encourage it. The longer we spent happily building and replenishing what we had, the more happy memories we could look back on when things did get harder. And they did. Okay, Scar admitted. This is pretty nice. Now that we're out of the gardens, I mean. I nudged her from the side, laughing with her. As we turned down one of the quieter streets, I saw a clock being installed that reminded me of something I'd been thinking about lately. Okay, I had another interesting thought, and I want to hear your opinion. Alright. This is me talking. Time works differently on different worlds, right? Right. And gates don't necessarily connect worlds at the same times, right? Right? Oh, she said, you've already lost me. I put the hand that wasn't on the crutch into my pocket as we walked. Okay. Say you have two gates that both link Earth and Saramea. They don't necessarily have to connect both worlds at the same points in time. They could connect the worlds at any 2 points in time. Scar nodded. Gates can connect any worlds anywhere at really any time. Right. So, imagine that I have a gate that connects Saramea now to Earth a year ago. And I have a second gate that connects Earth to Saramea, or that connects Earth to Saramea a year ago. Now, if I use the first one, when I get to Earth, I've traveled a year back in time. If I then use the second one, I come out on Saramea 2 years ago. Theoretically, I could keep doing that and travel through time as much as I want. The Scar frowned. I guess, but then you have to start dealing with time travel problems and it gets messy. You might not be able to affect anything. You might split off an alternate reality. I don't think it's worth it. No, I'm not planning anything, just thinking. Why are there so many ways for time travel to go? Scar shrugged. Every world has different laws of nature that allow certain magics and things. I think the way time works is just one of those variables. Interesting. Our walk took us through the area where the Scanorans had been given room to spread out. They were an especially communal people, and it was good to see the way they made Saramea their own. They agreed to have the same 2-story apartment-style housing that we built throughout the rest of the city's center, but they asked the masons not to carve out the same ornamentation that the rest of the city displayed, because Saramaeans are masons, right? With the blockier buildings, they were able to secure woven branches that connected the homes. Alleys were shaded, and whole sections of the road were covered by wood. Some areas were tight and took on impressive shapes as the wood was able to swoop and arch, supported by the sticks around it. In the more public areas, the wooden art was loosely woven. The looser weaves now had fall leaves to fill some of the spaces, most of them hand-filled according to color. The effect was like fire caught in an instant and splashed across the street. Walking through the Skanoran district, we saw Hana telling a story to a few dozen children, some older adults and a pregnant young woman that all had gathered in a wooden alcove. They sat in the corner of the square, mesmerized, to hear about the adventures of the Skanoran seers long ago. Most of their stories seemed to come from the early days of the Profithian occupation, when the Profithians weren't so controlling and instead just left the seers on Skynor to fend for themselves. Hana nodded to us as we passed, continuing her story about a young girl determined to stop a waterfall, to prove she was strong enough to stop the green ones when they came to find her village. Scar and I paused to listen, chatting from outside the alcove with an ear to the story. That's the kind of leader I want to be, I said. Scar looked at me with false confusion. The kind that sits and tells stories? No, the kind that people love to follow. They trust her with everything they have. Lately, I worry that I'm going to overstep my bounds in the council and set their judgment on me. As a quick side note, the council did find out that I took Andrew to the Gateseekers. They were not happy, and this next little bit was a little bit tough because of that. Thus, what's going on here? That's right, Scar answered. You are still only 17 years old. Oh, wait. Yeah, and I think that's going to be part of the dynamic no matter how well you do as a leader. Hana's got a grandmotherly charm that you're just lacking, and I'm kind of glad for that. I smiled at that. Hana threw a burst of leaves over the heads of the children. They giggled as Hana told about the girl being splashed with water as she tried to hold up the waterfall, keeping the water from hitting the rocks below. The worst part, I said, is that I feel like we really need to change some things, but if I try to reorganize the council, they'll think that I did it wrong the first time, or they'll be afraid of losing power like they had it before. It's almost like I've boxed myself into where I am, and anything I do to get out could spill the things I've worked so hard to contain. Hana swept her arms wide, giving the children an image of the girl trying to hold the waterfall in an animal skin the village used for storing water. When the water skin burst, the girl got drenched again, this time dragging a sodden water skin back home behind her. Despite the sober image, Hana smiled knowingly. This girl was determined to stop the waterfall. Scar nodded. When I accepted Grant's challenge to stop the Profithians, I tried to do everything he told me to do, but so much had changed since he'd seen the Profithians. He was so confident that his plans would work, but they failed. He needed someone who could see the bigger picture. I think that's what's happening to you. You're changing because you're seeing the bigger picture. And you led these people through transformation before. If they need another transformation, you need to make it happen. There's still a war threatening the existence of Demias Krai, even if no one in the council can see it. And what if I'm just not the right person for the job? I showed up out of nowhere, and the only qualification I have is that it was once really easy for destiny to possess me. How does that make me the leader everyone should follow? What if I'm just imagining that things need to change because I want people to do things my way? Hana stood, suddenly, scrambling with her hands, like the girl who couldn't stop the waterfall from below, so she climbed all the way up to the top. From above, she could see the stream that fed the waterfall. The job looked just as hard from up here. However, she spied a dead tree that stood close to the stream. Hana walked around the alcove as the girl inspected the tree. It was so rotted inside that the tree was barely standing. After a few sharp blows from a rock, the girl was able to push the tree into the stream. The stream died quickly. The girl went back to the edge to see with triumph that the waterfall was gone. Looking out over the valley, she could see something else. The green ones. They'd come to find her village. The girl scrambled back down the rock face, running as fast as she could to warn her family and her friends. But when she got there, the village had other problems to face. Their clean water was gone. The water skins torn up. Not only that, the village was flooding because something had moved the stream, and now the green ones were coming. Hana fell silent, putting her hand on the lap of the pregnant woman. The girl from Hana's story had ruined the village, but she had also stopped the waterfall. Would she be strong enough to stop the green ones? Bravely, she stepped to the front of the village, feet wet, with water that danced between her toes and trickled down the trail to the valley. But after an hour of waiting, she realized that the green ones had gone right past the village. They saw the water running down the trail and thought it was just another stream. Her family and friends helped the girl repair the village and dig a path for the new stream that wound around the village, but still ran down the path to hide them from the green ones. Scar caught a falling leaf from the sapling beside us in the middle of the square. Maybe you need to trust yourself before others will feel comfortable trusting you. They chose you as their leader, and even if they hadn't, you still know what's right. If you're trying to make good things happen, there's no reason to hesitate. Just go out there and do what you need to do. If you're with the right people, they'll follow. If not, well, you have the power to change the group of people you spend time with. But if you trust yourself and show that you trust them, they'll come around. I turned to her. Scar, you're pretty insightful sometimes. I try, she beamed. Yeah, I love that. After that, there was another council meeting, and there was another council meeting where I took Scar's advice. I did what I felt like I'd been needing to do. I made Darren the head of interdimensional affairs by title and not just by random association. And I could tell that they didn't like that, most of the other council members, now that Darren had a permanent chair in the council. But I felt like it was something that needed to happen. And I feel like it did help. There's plenty more of this story. We also put some plans into place. The Seer Guard we finally put together with our travelers and started to send them out with groups of military that Sestian was training. And we were starting to clear out the Profithians in the area. We were actually cleansing Saramea. And it felt really good to be making that kind of progress. There was still so much left ahead of us, and the Profithians were moving as well. I think it was... I haven't reviewed the notes for that part. It takes time to read through my whole memoir and choose which parts are best. But anyway, our spies had been checking on the Profithians and had found the other worlds that Darren had talked about, because it's the world of becoming that they came from. They came to the world of trust, which is Saramea. All of their seers were being kept on the world of trust, and did I say trust or truth up here? And then trust had the seers, and the world of decision had just another colony. And we needed to clean them all out, because we were realizing that they were starting more stuff. They'd been doing a lot of research on the world of becoming, but they'd been actually training their troops on the world of decision, and they were powering everything from the world of trust. And we needed to shut down all of those. We decided first off that we would take down the world of trust, shut down their powering, so that they couldn't be doing the same kind of research, and so they wouldn't have the energy that they needed to make their troops actually move. And then we'd cut them off from the world of decision and get everybody back to the world of becoming. So that was that whole council meeting. If there's anything important, we'll tell you next time. But that is the end of chapter 19.